This took place at some point in the early 2000s at an elementary school on Long Island. My dad worked and still currently works there as a custodian. And being that my parents split up, I would go to work with him on the days that he had me in the summer, which was a lot since I loved spending time with him any chance that I could. Honestly, I really loved having the whole school to myself. My two older brothers would come in once in a blue moon, but naturally, they drew out of spending too much of their summer at the school and stopped coming altogether, leaving just me. That's when things started getting strange. There were only 3 of us in the building that whole summer. Me, my dad, and his coworker Joey. It's a decent-sized 2-story building with a gymnasium, auditorium, and the other usual elementary school amenities. I would entertain myself the way any kid might do during the day, going into the gym and dumping every ball on the floor from the closet, playing on the computers, reading in the library, and making a mess in the art room. Not to mention the best part of all, unlimited tiny cartons of chocolate milk. I suppose it started subtly from what I recall, like being in the middle of shooting hoops in the gym, and then all of a sudden just feeling like someone was watching me. So much so that I just dropped the ball and left to find my dad. It happened in the computer room too. I was just minding my own business, and then just got this very intense feeling of being watched. It would feel heavy in the room when it would happen, and like the silence became loud, if that makes sense. It creeps me out just remembering that feeling. It started to happen very often, and when it did, I would simply get up from what I was doing and leave to find my dad or his coworker. One day, I had been sitting in that same computer room when it happened again. I decided to tough it out this time, and I stayed put in my seat, probably playing Oregon Trail or something. I felt that intense feeling making me want to leave, but I stayed. And the longer I stayed, the closer it felt like if I turned around, it would be right there behind me. I remember being so tense that my back hurt, and then I heard whispers. They were inaudible, but unmistakably coming from the room that I was in. I felt frozen with fear. I remember the voice of the whispers sounding guttural and chaotic. I don't remember how long I sat in fear just listening to something that felt so strange and unexplainable. I snapped out of it when I heard the sounds of women chattering in the hallway. I was relieved that there were teachers coming up there with me, and I got up without looking back and darted towards the voices in the hallway. I was on the top floor of the building. It's shaped like a rectangle lined with classrooms on the outside, and the center occupied by bathrooms, closets, and a facility room. The voices that I had heard were coming from the other side of the building, and when I rounded the corner to get to where they were coming from, there was no one there. I heard the voices again, but now they were coming from the other side of the building where I had just been. So I went back, and then again, they were coming from the other side of the building. All the while that I was searching for people who weren't there. I had that feeling when you're running up basement stairs and feel like something is right behind you, and it's like ice running up your spine. I finally decided to run down to the first floor and find my dad. When I did, I frantically told him about the teacher's voices upstairs, but not the whispers. I think I was trying to pretend like that didn't happen because it was so scary. It was the first time that I had told him about anything that I had experienced, because I was so sure that there were women talking in the hall upstairs. He explained to me that there were no teachers here, and that they usually came at the end of the summer to set up their classrooms, but it was a bit too early in the summer for that. Also, he said that he would have to buzz them in from the main entrance for them to come into the school. Him and Joey checked every room for me to see if there was someone there, or if there was an open window letting in noise from outside. There was nothing, and no open windows. Just the 3 of us in an empty school. We didn't really talk about it after that. He didn't tell me I was hearing things, and he didn't try to explain it away either. It was just what it was. And although it had been a terrifying experience, I had been coming to that school since I was a baby, and it was easy feeling comfortable alone again, even if it did take a couple of weeks being glued to my dad's side. The last encounter that I had in that school was when I was upstairs alone again, 2 classrooms down from the room that I had heard the whispers in. It was nearing the end of summer and I was given the task of dusting off chairs and desks in all the upstairs classrooms from whatever had built up during the summer. Bent over and dusting a chair, I saw in my peripheral vision someone standing in the doorway. I thought it was Joy because my dad is a bigger guy, and this shape looked tall and slender. He was standing there for a while, so I started talking to what I thought was him, but he just stood there not answering me. When I went to look up, I saw a man, but this was not Joey. It happened so fast because he turned and sprinted out of the room almost the moment that I looked up, but not quickly enough so that I couldn't see his or its face. I really wish I hadn't because it is ingrained in my memory. It was pale and it had a human male face, but it looked off. The eyes were too big and everything about it looked unnatural. It was wearing clothes, but I can't for the life of me describe them. I was too startled by its face. I froze again. I just stood there, afraid to move until finally my body untensed and I ran back downstairs and into the kitchen. I would usually pretend to feel unaffected by spooky things in the school, but this time I ran until I found my dad and Joey in the kitchen. Just for the sake of not sounding ridiculous, I asked if either of them had been upstairs. They hadn't. After I told my dad, they did the whole school check again, reassuring me that no one was there. I remember feeling embarrassed that I had kept coming to them scared. On the ride home that day, my dad had told me that I wasn't crazy, and that there was residue in the school since it was old and always full of people, and when it was empty, it was still so used to moving all the time and having all that energy. He said in his time there, he had heard his name being called and mop buckets rolling down the halls when no one was there but him. He said that he didn't want to tell me at first because he didn't want to scare me. It has been years now since all that happened, but about 2 years ago from present day, my dad calls me up one night and says, "You'll never believe what one of the teachers told me." He then explained that a teacher claimed to see a well-dressed man standing in back of another teacher's classroom in the middle of a lesson while walking down the hall one day. When she asked the other teacher who the man was later that day, the other teacher was confused and said that there had been no man in her class. It was the same classroom that I had seen the man with the big eyes. I don't know if it was the same man that I saw, and I wouldn't tell my dad this since he was frequently there alone to check the building. But I don't know if I believe that the activity there is simply residue or energy. I think there's something there that went out of its way to scare a child, and I don't think it was friendly. This isn't the first paranormal encounter that I've had, but it is only the second time someone was with me when something strange and inexplicable happened. We moved into the new house that we're currently living in October of last year. I should mention, the house that we came from also had its share of really creepy happenings, and there is one event that I feel is connected to what happened in the new house. I was home alone with my dog, reading on my bed. My parents at the time were remodeling their bathroom, and they had met with a man who would be doing the job at the home improvement store down the block to look at tiles. Now, this whole encounter was quick and over in a matter of seconds, if I'm going to be honest with you. But even now, years later, I struggle to get out with shaky hands on my keyboard. Before I get on with it, I just want to say I was in near silence, meaning no music was playing and no TV. My laptop was off and charging. I was not on my phone, no headphones in. Basically, I wasn't doing anything that would cause a noise. And seeing that I was home alone, the only source of a human voice would have been me. The only sound that could be heard was the sound of the AC. So, I was on my bed reading, my dog was downstairs, presumably napping since he was like 12 years old at the time. He's still kicking and he's 17, and he has a heart condition that causes him to get tired easily. All of a sudden, I hear my mom's voice, greeting the dog like she always does when she comes home. And I mean exactly the way she does, switching between English and Spanish, the same tone, everything. I stood up, stretched, but realized that I hadn't heard the door open, so I approached the stairs. and very confusedly called out to my mom. "Mom?" Silence, and then my dog started screaming. I mean screaming as if he was being tortured. Crying and whining, and I started calling out to him, scared out of my mind. I took the first step of the stairs down and immediately froze. Something felt so very wrong. I was flushed with this fear. I knew without a doubt that whatever greeted my dog was not my mom. Whatever it was, it literally froze me with fear. My dog finally came running up, zoomed right past me into my room, headed into my bathroom and hid behind the toilet. Mind you, through tears and shaky hands, I did call my mom. I practically blew up her phone, but all I got was voicemail. It was the first time that something like that had happened to me, and I knew that I couldn't just explain it off and shelve it to the back of my mind. Later when my mom got home, I told both of my parents what had happened. They brushed it off and thought that I was just imagining things. The second time is actually what I'm writing this post on. It happened in November of last year, but in between moving and settling in, finding a new job, my grandmother's declining health, and how scared my mom was now has been the only time I've gotten to keep calm and tell the story of my second encounter, which what I now refer to as the Mimic. This new house we moved to was built literally a month before we moved in. The neighborhood is still under construction. My mom and I were sitting in the family room giving each other pedicures. My stepfather had gone out with my grandfather to run some errands. We were watching something on Netflix when we both heard my stepdad come in through the front door. My mom called out to him, "Are you okay?" To which we both heard him respond, "Yeah, honey, I'm good." We heard him open the garage door and go in. Obviously, thought nothing of it. 20 minutes passed and we both nearly jump out of our skins when my grandfather opens the backyard door in the family room, peeks his head in and asks if we could open the garage when we had a chance so they could unload the groceries. My mom and I look at each other again, confused as it seems to be an ongoing theme, and then she tells him, "Isn't it open? He just came in." We both look at each other and she starts calling out to him, but my grandfather cuts her off and tells her that it's impossible because my stepdad was out back. We go out to look and there, getting out of his car, it was my stepdad. I looked at my mom to see that she had the same petrified look on her face. My stepdad, still getting out of the car not looking at us, goes, "Sorry guys, I left the house key by accident. Can you open the garage door so we can unload the groceries?" My mom takes off inside with me trailing behind her, and lo and behold, the lock in the front door was still on, and the garage door was still locked as well. Guys, I can't even explain how terrifying it was for my mom and I. We don't speak of it. That day, my parents fought for hours, my mom thinking that it was my stepdad playing some kind of prank on her, but that clearly was not the case. Later that night when my mom was alone, I approached her and asked her what she thought about what had happened. My mom looked at me very sharply, looked me dead in the eye and said, "Don't ever talk about this again." I didn't think to connect the two experiences until now. Since then, I have not encountered the Mimic. I noticed growing up that while in my early adolescence, late childhood, early prepubescent stage, there was more than often a smell of rotting meat and sulfur that would linger around the house. I would always report and complain to my mom and dad that I would experience these things in and around the house. Now, our home was very clean. My mother and grandmother, who were alive at the time, were always busy scrubbing the kitchen countertops, the floors with that fabuloso smelling detergent and cleaning supply. You know, the one island stores you walk by and your knees get weak because it smells so good. Well, anyway, our home was very clean. Waxed floors, clean windows, always open in the springtime, and grandma liked her sheets hung in the upper wind. I'll point out early on that our home was always tested and run up to code for radon, carbon monoxide, CO2 exposure, and UF emission. All things come back negative and were given a clean bill of health. all the time, which looking back baffled anyone and everyone to question. I never saw these, but literally all of my siblings, my relatives and friends of my siblings, who would spend the night will gladly swear before judge and jury they witnessed these things. No soul mentioned here was mentally ill, abusing substances, or lying for notoriety. Shadow figures. A lot of shadow apparitions, and plenty of visible full-bodied apparitions. They carried with them the ability to manipulate the area around them. Some were identified as male, rarely female. Once, my older sister, was sleeping in an old room before I took over, and before she left for college. She tells this to this day. She wakes up, dead of night, pitch black save for the sliver of light creeping in from the lamppost outside. There's a figure, nondescript, bordering on the edge of the light and leading back into the darkness. She said, its arm was reaching out, hand open and grabbing for me. Spooky, huh? Well, there's more. Another occasion, she gets up and hears footsteps walking down the hall towards the kitchen. She hears the cabinet doors open and close, where we keep the glasses and chinaware. She thinks nothing of it and decides to go get a drink. Upon entering the kitchen, she sees all cabinet doors wide open, and there isn't a member of the family awake. I have heard footsteps and saw a door handle move. Some years back, I come home from school and I want to make a PB&J. So, I'm standing at the counter when from behind me, I hear heavy footsteps slamming up the stairs. My first thought, oh, so we're doing this now. I saw the door handle jiggle, like a hand was grasping around and twisting it. Never opened. I promptly made myself forget about it because despite being the size of a grizzly bear with the attitude of a teddy bear, I get scared of things very easily. Seriously, I've jumped at my own shadow before several times. Back to the story. My younger sister comes home from college. It wasn't that far away she drove to and from, and follows in my footsteps and makes a sandwich. She hears it and sees it. The heavy footsteps, the door handle. She freaks out because she's seen more stuff than I have and is more adept at the hauntings than I was. Backstory, I'm a devout Catholic, have been all my life and I'll die one. My room at the time, and now, looks like a chapel, which there is a reason for. My family has a theory that I wasn't screwed with as much because I was the only one in the house with more than one crucifix in the room. So, my brother comes home from work. We promptly tell him. Being former military and security forces, he gets his .45 and does a sweep of the property. No sign of forced entry. Basement is empty and undefiled by supposed occupying creeps. Hopefully this small novel hasn't lost you, but wait, there's more. My brother has seen things levitate several times. Of course I call BS, who wouldn't? 9 out of 10, there's always a logical explanation for things to occur. Heck, even exorcists are ardent skeptics. Anyway, he has seen his shoe fly across the room. He woke up one night to find his pillow standing stock still. Seriously, standing straight up. He's seen shadow apparitions and has heard his name whispered and called, as have I. It's horrifying when it happens to you. But there's more from him. I'll have to ask and write it down if everybody wants. I witnessed with my own 2 eyes the door to my parents' bedroom swing open and close by itself. Windows closed, no draft and no string. I saw it and it still scared me. I've heard the multitude of whispers in my own home. Seriously, it sounded as if a whole party of people just decided to whisper rock and have it out. My house, well, my whole family is old school Catholic. When I say old school, I mean this. The modern world has lost touch with the idea of the demonic long ago. The world has misinterpreted the signs. The demonic have actually increased, prompting the Vatican to release the Roman ritual of solemn exorcism to Protestant denominations. Think about what I just said. There are certain denominations who don't even have the belief in the diabolic or the rite of exorcism. Old school Catholics have the firm teachings of exorcist light, meaning that all Catholics before Vatican II were basically little, not-ordained exorcists running around. If you're curious, look up a Catholic deliverance ministry. They're the grandchild of the olden ways. So, I spoke of this to bring this point home. My sister, older, whom I love absolutely dearly, I would do anything for her in a heartbeat. She's my best friend. But she's an absolute window licker when it comes to this story. She and her window-licking friends used a Ouija board in the basement. Send in the priest. That house has been blessed a total of 5 times. Oh, don't get me wrong. It always was peaceful for long durations, until the activity just reappeared like a bad penny. Here I am, here to haunt.